Hello, and welcome. I'm your host today, Alex Weaver, and joining me today is Rick Dennen, CEO of First Franchise Capital, and Alicia Chandler, President of First Franchise Capital. Today, we will be discussing insights on lending, capital markets, M&A activity, leadership development, and emerging technologies as we look to prepare for the remainder of the year and headed into 2027. Rick and Alicia, thank you for joining me today.
Thank you for
Thank
having us.
you. Thank you.
Absolutely. So, to start things off as we look ahead to the rest of the year and, potentially into 2027, what conversations are you hearing the most from our clients and what opportunities that they think business owners should be paying most attention to right now?
Yeah, I mean, it's a great question. I think clients need to just continue ahead with, their plans. They can't just sit idly by and wait on the interest rate to maybe drop or even be increased again. They need to continue to focus on, finding efficiencies and increasing their margins. I think that's going to be something that's going to be very important, especially, as they look to incorporate AI and different technologies into their companies.
Yeah, I mean, but the only thing to add, I think Alicia's right on. Everybody's waiting for something to happen, the market to move, rates to drop, rates to increase. And, what everybody is seeing and hearing is that, the earnings coming out of companies is very solid and expected to continue for the year, which to me gets to, one of the comments from Alicia is that set a strategy, stick to it. You got to always modify it as you go along. But there's a lot of things going, but I think there's also a lot of stability in the markets today and in a lot of the companies. So stick to that strategy until you have to change it.
Is there anything else from the lending and capital markets that you guys are seeing right now that, you think business owners specifically should be paying attention to?
And something we've seen over the past couple of years is I think it has to do with the amount of capital that's in the markets today, that the opportunities to structure deals that are a little bit more seller friendly, meaning maybe they're taking some minority equity with a plan, as they can use that equity to grow the business, enhance the earnings, and then they've got a built-in buyer in 2, 3, 4, 5 years, whatever it may be when they execute on something. Versus it seems like, 5, 10 years ago in a lot of these businesses, it was they're buying 100%. And with all the upside and, opportunities ahead of you and with multiples increasing, some of the owners and sellers were missing out on the upside of that. So it seems like with some of those minorities, and we've even seen a couple of business models that is very specific to say we're buying minority, with the intent to eventually take it out. So that's kind of a new structure. I really like it. And then for lending, I think it creates a really good alignment between the buyer and the seller and, for us to step in as the lender.
Yeah, I think the other thing, that we're continuing to see, as Rick alluded to, is just the creativity of the acquisition structures. Whether it's the amount down, the sell and stay type of scenario where the seller's getting equity and the buyer. Just again, just continuing to see those types of um, acquisition structures change.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. It's having that flexibility to, give the sellers what they want so you can actually be the one that kind of wins the deal on the buy side. We've been hearing a lot about M&A activity in 2026 and what are you seeing firsthand and what does that mean for owners and how they may consider, making a transaction in the next few years or potentially, in the short term?
The amount of capital coming into this industry isn't slowing down. And I think the M&A did slow down when those rates went up 500 basis points. And so then you get a little bit of dip in those rates and drops and I think 3 rate decreases were expected in 2026, which has now been 1. That money needs to be deployed. Rates are still relatively low when you look at, the overall cost of funds. So um, that's one thing.
How are talent and leadership challenges really impacting the long-term growth plans of some of these businesses that are trying to retain that, good young talent?
I mean, the retention of those is making sure that, um, they're tied in. We always encourage and we love to see where the ownership is spread between many people, as we provide funds, and that maybe the founder or the patriarch or whomever was the original owner, that they're not keeping all the ownership. They're rewarding those that are helping them get to the next level. So that some of the relationships, because that's really what we're lending against is the relationships, that those relationships are with several different people versus lending the money to one company and that person is retiring and getting out, and then they're going to transfer the relationships. Like that's when you're going to have the highest, you know, loss rates on customers, and that's not what you want to buy. So, it's the piece of the pie or having the whole pie, and clearly like to see more people sharing their pie with the people that are leading the organization and helping it develop and get it to the next level. So having that to me is the greatest way to keep people engaged and aligned.
I think it also shows when they're interviewing people or bringing in new people that, if they have that ownership mentality, that also entices new people to come in with them. And that's I think, an advantage to a competitor if they don't have that.
Definitely. And then what do you think separates the businesses that are really, thriving in today's market versus the ones that kind of have that, stagnation, or maybe they have some growth, but it's not organic because they're just kind of riding the wave.
I think it's the continuing mindset of evolution. Like, Rick was saying, you can't just be stagnant or you're falling behind. So you have to constantly be reassessing your plans, making sure you have your house in order.
Yeah, I agree. And Alicia knows, every year we kind of take a step back when we're doing budgeting for the next year and really evaluate our core competencies. We evaluate the markets, and, everything. We kind of sit back and say, okay, where can we take this to next year? And we put together usually some pretty aggressive goals on growth. It's not here's a strategy to retain the level of performance or the level of portfolio that we have. It's here's how we're going to continue to grow. And that includes, what Alicia talked about with efficiencies, whether it be technology, process, or people. We're focusing on that. And we give a true evaluation, I think, of what we're good at and what we're not good at. And then the management team kind of comes together after all of that effort is done to say, here's the strategy. Let's go put it, let's figure it out and map out what things need to be done and what time frames. And it's been a pretty effective process.
Yeah, and I mean, that's what we expect of our, clients as well. The clients that perform the best and are at the top of our portfolio, they do those same things.
Yeah.
Yeah. So then there's obviously been a lot of conversations around AI and how that's going to be incorporated in, all the verticals that we work in. What do you think tool wise, most businesses should realistically be looking at, and how do they kind of implement those to make sure they're not one of those businesses that stagnates and continue to evolve?
You know, the leadership at the top, they don't have to understand exactly, and use AI because a lot of times they're, call it somewhat technically challenged, but they have to be committed if they're going to kind of embark on an AI strategy. Clearly, there's a lot of benefit to what AI can do for different organizations and in different ways. Uh, but, just to say you're doing it, but not being committed to it, not having the resources, the people, the technology, in committing to it and understanding it, like, I don't think you're going to be successful. I think you're going to get anybody can use AI. We can all use AI for drafting a memo or an email or helping out on something, but uh, helping to underwrite a loan, helping to generate a list to market to people, your insurance products that meet characteristics. I think it's things like that with all this data that's out there. Um, there's going to be certain people that are very, that benefit from it greatly, but I think it's those that have a good understanding of it and are really committed to it.
Yeah, sorry, I was going to say, I think it just makes sense. It's going to be a learning curve for people as they kind of tend to adopt it, but you kind of have to really, hone in and focus on it, or you're going to kind of do it
Yeah.
And there has to be a
halfway.
buy-in from the top down, right?
Yeah.
Like you all have to understand the why, what you want to use it for, what efficiencies you want to gain, and incorporate it into your process.
Yep.
So as we look ahead to 2027, what are some of the biggest opportunities for business owners that you are kind of seeing in the market, and how they can kind of be proactive with that growth?
Again, if rates decrease in 2027, which is now, more the expectation, it seems. We've already talked, there's plenty of capital there, but that's going to do nothing but, I think, continue to drive growth in the number of M&A deals, but like the multiples that are being paid are kind of plateauing, and you got to be careful how you look at that stuff, whether it's a historical or a pro forma or an adjusted pro forma. There's all different types of ways, but we're kind of at a plateau, and I think in those industries on what can be paid. So if rates come down a little bit, I think that drives some of the M&A. If they go back up, it might slow it down, but you're still at a really good low rate cost of funds in today's market that, 25, 50 basis point change in rate shouldn't impact your decision at all on whether you're going to acquire or not. But, as we talked throughout and Alicia just pointed out, a lot of the opportunities that I think exist for business owners.
Well, I definitely want to thank you both for being here today and sharing all of your insights with our audience. And thank you to those who tuned in and submitted questions. We appreciate your continued viewership. Stay tuned for more from us here at First Franchise Capital with new content and new guests. Thanks again.